hi again. I hope you all are doing good and enjoying TRT World's next forum. Let me start by saying this. Climate change is real and impacting us in more dangerous ways than ever before. And I feel the evidence is pretty much out there. Severe droughts, floods, wildfires. In fact, there was one in California about a few days ago. Carbon emissions in the air are higher than ever before. Now combine these factors with the coronavirus pandemic that emerged about 2 years ago. The pandemic devastated the lives of millions of people, billions of people in fact. Millions have been killed. And we are still trying to find ways to recover from this pandemic. This is what we discussed in one of my earlier panels. Now, what does the world need? We need ideas which could help us in finding out businesses which follow a sustainable strategy. And that's exactly what we are going to be discussing in our next panel, which is called Business with Impact, Pathways to a Sustainable Future. Before I introduce my panelists, let's quickly take a look at this video prepared by TRT World's Next Forum team. What comes next? Well, next is my panelist, Jamad Fiin. She is the CEO of Jamad basketball camps. Please. Çiftçi, social impact leader and founder, SosyalBen Foundation. Ece, please. Okay, next one. Mokhtar Alkanshali, founder, CEO, Port of Mokha. And last but not the least, Sara, Wahedi, CEO and founder, Ehtesab. And I should remind our audience that Roya Mehboob was supposed to be with us, but due to a personal emergency, she was not able to attend today's session. Well, let's begin. Like I said in the introduction, the world is trying to find ideas which could possibly help businesses lead to a sustainable future. Mokhtar, let me begin with you. Why are sustainable business models so important right now?
First off, universal greetings of peace, love, and justice. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
You guys can repeat. That's a very important question. Because of the way our food is being produced, distributed, and consumed is not sustainable for us. And so if we do not change the way we produce, distribute, and consume our food system, we are going to find ourselves in a very difficult place. Last year at the United Nations Food Summit, it was estimated that we have about 55 to 60 years left of topsoil. Topsoil is important because 95% of our food is grown on that kind of soil. And because of fertilizers that lead to runaways into our water systems, it affects marine life, it affects human life. 8 cents of every dollar that farmers produce is what they receive. The way that the confined systems for the way we eat or produce our chickens and livestock is not healthy. And because of food-related diseases, because of the way we consume unhealthy food from over-processed meats, something like in America, 30% of our healthcare bill goes to diseases caused by the food that we eat. All this to say is that the actual cost of food production currently, according to the United Nations, is around $29 trillion because of all these deforestation, climate change, labor problems, and health issues.
And correct me if I'm wrong, all this cost is not helping in any way towards a sustainable future.
No, because we only produce about 9 trillion in value for food. So this deficit is a huge problem. And so we have to change the way we produce, consume, and distribute our foods. Otherwise, this industrialized system is requiring an over-extraction of our resources, our labor, our animals, our environment, and it's an inefficient way that won't be sustainable. So we need to change the way we do things.
Indeed, we need to, and that's why we are here to discuss ways that could help us in changing what's wrong. Ajay, let me come to you. We have so many young faces here, and you have actively worked with the youth. Tell me what kind of role the youth can play in ensuring a strategy that countries across the world apply or implement a strategy which is based on a sustainable model.
Yeah, before that, I would like to really thank you for being here. It's great to talk more about, sustainability and youth empowerment. So I would like to answer this question according to the youth side and how we can make young people to be a part of the sustainability and also like the social impact. So on my side, with my NGO and with my point of view, we should start with the active citizenship, because for the sustainability is I think maybe the last point, but before that, we learn how to become volunteers. Volunteering can be teachable, and the second step is going to be being an active citizenship. And with the active citizens, with the young people, we can talk more about the real sustainability in the all world problems, let me say. So that's why young people, as a young people in here also, we have a great passion to start and change the world, but sometimes we just couldn't have a way to where to start. So from this point, maybe the business models and also maybe all the institutions around our country or around the world can, and we can with them also prepare a guideline. Because when we look at the volunteering and active citizenship rates in all around the world, we can see that there is imbalanced ratios between the developing countries and developed countries. And this ratio tells us about from the volunteering, we can comment more about active citizenship and sustainability models also. So maybe we can, for the developing countries, as a young people, we can start teaching the volunteering from all around the countryside, because otherwise then it becomes an unbalanced situation between the volunteers who have chance to experience volunteering and active citizenship and have an awareness about sustainability. And the other hand, there's a big gap between the young people or the target group who are just, we are applying it. So the first point would be about balancing the experience.
Okay, Ajay, I just want to make sure I get this right. So you're saying that sustainability is not the primary goal. The primary goal is active citizenship.
To come to sustainability, we need to,
So it's a ladder.
Yeah, exactly. First volunteering, experience the volunteering, and then, in quotations for sure, active citizens from the young side or for all the citizens, and then we can maybe more talk about deeper. We can talk about the sustainability. What I thought is it's about the levels, levels of going up.
Okay, and when we talk about active citizens, we cannot ignore the youth. And that's
for sure.
What brings me to Jamad, Fiin. Jamad, you have such a beautiful story. Tell us how in your country you helped young Muslim girls to overcome cultural and religious hurdles. And what would you tell young people who are present here right now and those who want to be empowered? What's the best way to do that? Because until and unless we empower the youth, there's no way we can reach a sustainable future.
It all started when I grew up. I was a Somali Muslim, American, first generation, here in the U.S. And it was also because basically the girls, growing up, I was the only girl who played basketball, who was a Muslim girl, and it was very odd to see that within our community. And it was just it opened doors to more girls who are younger now because of the camps and us going to different cities and making sure that those girls in those cities get the opportunity to play basketball and they use the resources that we give them, and also just having fun with the game, because like we do the camps just for the girls to like learn about the game, but to also like have fun while doing it, so they'll like obviously like come back and like want to play with it more. They create relationships with the girls that also come to the camps, and yeah, we just want to empower the young girls to like play sports, to go outside. Like you don't have to be inside your house, not playing sports. You don't have to be like fit the cultural like stereotypes that are on us right now. You can expand. You can play sports. You can do whatever you put your mind to, especially as young girls. And us as the older generation, we have to push that message forward and like really look to empower these younger kids growing up, because they are the future, and without us and like without leaders for them, then it'll be difficult for them. So we must like be the leaders for them
Jamad,
to create the change.
Let me add a question here, because certainly in many countries across the world, the youth is still not empowered. What is stopping them?
It's a good question. It's mainly the people like in the cities that are not making the impact. I feel as though like a lot of people they're like scared to like stand up for certain things, and I feel like if you just take the initiative to do that and like really make time out of your busy schedule, like everyone's busy, but just to make time out of your schedule to help the kids growing up and for them to like learn from you is really impactful for them. So I feel like every city or like every place in the world should have that one person.
Okay, so taking the initiative is very important.
Yes.
And that's what Sara did in her country with the help of technology. How important is it for us to make use of technology in order to reach a sustainable future?
Well, in my work, I've been working on my startup Ehtesab for about 4 years now, too, just on the app that we created, which sends real-time verified alerts to Kabul residents. And we monitor security information in 2 other provinces in Afghanistan. And what I remind people time and time again is that inequitability really comes from a government which wants to shun and hide information. And one of the most important things for all of us as citizens, no matter where we're from, whether it's from Turkey or Afghanistan, United States, wherever you may be in the world, a government that is inequitable, that wants to limit growth and sustainability, will hide information and will make it impossible to find data. And that's what I'm trying to do through my work, is to democratize access to information. I'll give an example. When I first started working on Ehtesab, an explosion happened near my home, and the next day I woke up and I was wondering why we don't have a real-time verified platform to get information about explosions, things that are happening in a city that is crippled by chaos, crippled by war. And I found out actually that information is provided to diplomats, the U.S. Embassy, the top businesses working in Afghanistan, the richest, the elites. And I was wondering, that's a crime, essentially. Why don't Afghans have access to information that will save their lives? And that's going on everywhere around the world. Any country, whether it's Yemen, whether it's countries like Libya or Iraq, Syria, information that is extremely important for the citizenry is sold, and people are making infinite profit from that. And when we speak about sustainability and innovation, you need to understand those dangers and those limitations and find sustainable solutions to those. And that comes from the youth. And I think youth sometimes misunderstand their ability to bring about change, but it really comes through an idea and finding a group of people that really trust your idea. And I would tell the youth here that if you do have an idea, you will find support, and business and innovation will be led by youth. It won't be from the older generations, because we know how to think outside the box and react to our realities of the day. So I would really encourage everyone, no matter what you think your startup, lacks, there's always a solution to that.
There is indeed always a solution, and I love the points you made. So to put things into context, it's of paramount importance for us to ensure that those who are vulnerable are not exploited by some entities in the world. And that leads me to my next question. There's certainly inequality. I mean, no one here would dispute that, right, when we talk about today's world order. Mokhtar, now, you come from Yemen, a country which is going through the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. It is the worst humanitarian crisis in the world right now, yet only a few talk about it. In fact, about a few weeks ago, the UN, in a statement, said that if Yemen is not helped, it is going to become a hell on earth in the not too distant future. So all this talk about sustainability, future, green model, that cannot be achieved until and unless we help those who are in countries like Yemen, right?
Absolutely, and unfortunately, the situation is pretty horrific. But I like to see the glass half full, especially when there's Yemeni coffee. And I think that even though there is a difficult reality, we can't oftentimes control the political situation or the climate situation, it doesn't mean that there's not room or space for innovation, for imagination, and for a belief that we can do something positive. And I think the private sector in particular has an incredible opportunity in these situations where, yes, Yemen is going through a difficult moment now, and it's been going through a horrible place for the last 7 years. But I think a lot of these countries that are going through difficulties, whether it's Yemen, whether it's right now in Ethiopia, and one talks about what's happening in Tigray and Ukraine and so forth, that every country has incredible products and things that they produce. And I hear the word developed countries and underdeveloped countries, and I don't like those terminologies. These countries are not underdeveloped. These countries, if not, they're overexploited. These countries have wonderful Afghan pomegranates in Kandahar. There's incredible bananas in Somalia. There's incredible handicrafts in Turkey. There's wonderful chocolate in West Africa and Cote d'Ivoire. Every country has something incredible to produce. I didn't forget about Pakistani mangoes either. And so I think that young people, we can reimagine our countries. I live between a producing country like Yemen and a consuming country, in California. And why can I not try to be a bridger between these two cultures? We can tell our stories better than someone else. I'm tired of seeing quote unquote white people discovering chai or things like that.
Chai tea latte.
And so I think it's up to us to reimagine these places, and especially in small business. As Muslims particularly, we have a conscious duty to be conscious consumers. There's many hadiths and ayahs of the Quran talk about one of these things that can block someone from having their dua, supplication received is a hadith says, إِذَا كَانَ مَلْبَسُ مِنْ حَرَامٍ وَمَأْكَلُ مِنْ حَرَامٍ وَمَشْرَبُ مِنْ حَرَامٍ فَأَنَّ لَا يُسْتَجَابُ لَهُ. If his clothing is from haram means exploitation. If his food, if his drink, how can their du'as be accepted? So I think as people of consciousness, we should, in religion and faith, we should look at these models as examples. And so I think that in Yemen, yes, we're going through the worst humanitarian crisis. 70% of the population is food insecure. It's really hard for me to think about children, what the amount of children that die in Yemen. Every 9 minutes or so, a child dies in Yemen. And these numbers are really horrible to think about. But also, we produce wonderful things, and I think it's up to us to be people of positivity and to try to reimagine our countries and build these bridges. And I'm really excited to see wonderful organizations like the ones here talking about their work.
For example, in the case of Yemen, please. For example, in the case of Yemen, Mokhtar, the UN asked for help from the world. It asked for approximately, if I'm not mistaken, $5 billion in aid, but only 25% of it was given. So certainly countries have a role to play. World powers, countries such as the US, they have a role to play. But are they really playing a role in, number one, addressing inequality, number two, ensuring that countries apply policies which could lead towards sustainable growth? Ajay, tell me, what kind of role do you think countries and unions such as the European Union have to play here?
Yeah, for sure. And before that, I would like to, there's like a misunderstanding. So like, I don't want to like to make like levels between the countries, but I just want to try to say that according to when we compare with the volunteering rates. So Mokhtar, I'm sorry if it is misunderstanding. So when we look at the countries, especially what we did with the SosyalBen, with my foundation is especially like this, because like as a young people we are, and as a young people who want to do something for our community, for our countries, and for our world especially, like we would like to start from some point, and that's why we are here. When we look to the countries, we can say that we can, work as a team, like a collaboration, and what we are doing with SosyalBen is especially this, because like we are based in Istanbul, Turkey, but we are working 11 different countries to make students to reach the quality education. So what I understood from the countries and like governments' responsibilities is cooperation with the NGOs, cooperation with the young people, and cooperation with the like other institutions that working for the like peace and working for the common wellness, let me say. So that's why the point that I would like to also underline is for the politicians and like policymakers, the main thing is for the sustainability. Maybe they can start to ask the young people about their opinions instead of like talking and deciding for young people, instead of, we are here and we have a voice, we have an awareness.
But Ajay, if I may interject here now, when we talk about young people, we have to include young people from countries across the world, not cherry-pick people from the West.
Yeah, for sure,
right?
for sure, yeah.
For example,
yeah.
there are crises happening across the world. Yemen is one,
Yeah,
Palestine
for sure. Yeah,
second.
yeah.
But we don't see some countries, the countries which pretend to be the champion of human rights,
Yeah.
talk about the rights of young people in those countries.
Yeah.
So how do you address that?
For that point, actually, like they don't want to see us as a team, but we are as a team, like in that countries who don't want to see the youth rights, they're not seeing their young people too. So what is my passion about youth activism is we are not like selecting countries, we are not like thinking towards the borders. We want to do something for our planet, and right now in here, like we are doing something for our world. So that's why what I can say, that countries who are discriminating, they need to see the power of youth, and they must see, when you look at the youth population, we can see that one of the most crowded country, we can say, when we collect all the young people all around the world. So that's why I don't have an exact message to that countries or to that like politicians, because that means they didn't see the soft power of the young people. So we are here today, it's like a Saturday, and we are trying to influence each other, trying to do something for tomorrow, but starting from today. So what my basic message is going to be just, we would like to do something. If you want to do something in the future, we would like to start from today with by youth and for youth, instead of deciding for the young people without asking them. So this is my...
Guys, let's give a round of applause to yourself for being here today to discuss issues that matter. I just want to pick up on one thing you mentioned about discrimination. We saw discrimination happening, Jamad, since the beginning of this pandemic. For example, some countries, in fact, most of the African countries, did not receive vaccines. It was the West. And this is a point I made earlier as well. There were countries in the world which ordered enough vaccines to vaccinate their whole population over 5 times, while there were some countries which did not even receive a single dose of a vaccine up until early last year. So certainly there is discrimination. Now, we're here to talk about sustainable growth, sustainable future, but until and unless we address the discrimination, that cannot be achieved. So from your own experience, what are your thoughts on this? How do we end the discrimination, which is possibly acting as a stumbling block right now?
I think it's the power of equality and just making sure everybody is equal, and for everyone to have that mindset that no matter where we are or no matter where we come from, no matter if we're rich or poor, we're all human beings at the end of the day. And just to make sure that everybody gets the same resources, like with just like with basketball in general or sports, like coming from my experience, like boys get more attention or they get more resources. The parents are okay with bringing them to like their basketball practice or for them to play for their school or anything. But like for our side, for the girls, like we always have to like beg our parents to do stuff. We have to beg our parents to go outside. Like we have to beg our parents to like play sports. And just like for like coming from an older generation, like everything has to be equal now, and it's like up to us and like the youth and like our generation to make sure like everyone gets the same treatment. And it's the same for anything in life. Like everybody should have the same resources. Like everybody should be treated equally.
Indeed, equality is important. Sara, now you have closely worked with technology. How do you think technology can be used to address this issue? Because technology includes social media. I'm sure everyone who is present here, if not everyone, most of them use social media, right? How do we address inequality on social media?
Well, the first inequality, I think, is definitely the access to social media, access to technology. I mean, just access to technology, I think we forget, especially being in a country like Turkey right now, I assume mostly everyone in this room has a smartphone. But when it comes to places, for example, like Afghanistan or Yemen or places of crisis, access to technology is nil, is not where it should be. And there is a clear discrimination in access to technology that works for the benefit of a lot of different factions, whether they are governments, whether they are businesses. It is profitable to keep half of the population hidden and ignorant and misinformed or disinformed. And this is the first thing that needs to be dealt with, is how can we mitigate the discrimination and inequality to access to technology? Because we are regurgitating and repeating the same narratives because that's all we hear. We hear the narratives of those who can afford technology, and that's a huge problem because we're always trying to leapfrog. We're trying to find the newest innovation. But when we're doing that and we're not taking the time to think about where we are in technology, I mean, like we saw in the first panel, we're talking about a metaverse. Half of the population of the world isn't even able to text. So we're talking about the metaverse. I mean, there is a huge inequality that's happening in technology, especially when it comes to the most basic information, education, healthcare, basic human rights. That's being more accessible through technology. Everything is moving away from paper to the web. And we need to sit down as a collective society and talk about how are we going to push the rest of the world forward onto technology. We're not moving back. That's one thing. So that's the first thing that we need to mitigate before we can even start speaking about the next period of solutions or innovation. Is that especially in my country, only 5% of the population uses smartphones. That's 95% of Afghans who can't go on Google, who don't have Facebook. And what does that mean for governance? And what does that mean for innovation? What does that mean for business when the whole world is moving forward and half the world is left behind?
Very important points, Mokhtar. Only 5%, as Sara says, of the population in Afghanistan has access to smartphones. And I'm sure there are other examples of this inequality in other parts of the world as well. Tell me, who is to blame? I don't want to make this discussion political at all, but who is to blame?
For the inequality in the world?
In the developing countries.
I mean, if we...
I know you don't like the terminology developing, but I mean, just for the sake of our audience, I have to use it.
If we look at, like, historically, the global colonial white power structure that has colonized most of our countries for centuries, the amount of resources they extracted from trillions of dollars in India, in Africa, the uranium, the things on our phones. So there's just a long history of just greed and capitalism that's unchecked, that happens. And it continues even now as consumerism. It's really unhealthy. Like, we need to understand where our things come from. The Bengali workers who are burned in factories, textile mills, the iPhone workers in factories in China who are committing suicide, the people in California picking tomatoes and dying heat exhaust. There's so much gender, racial, technological, climate inequality in the world today. And so I think that, I always go back to like my faith for guidance. In the Quran it says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيْرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيْرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. God will not change the condition of a people unless they change themselves. We just need to look into ourselves. There is no one who's going to help us except for ourselves. And I think we have so many people, so many ideas. The youth that you
If I may
mentioned.
interject here now, I certainly think there are people who want to change, and they are actively trying to change, but the change is not happening. I mean, take Afghanistan, for example. Take Yemen, for example. The people over there certainly want to change. I'm sure they have the willingness, but the change is not happening. Why is that?
I think it is happening. I'm really excited when I hear stories of what's going on with youth here and what's going on, and even with this event, TRT. We live in a world where the media is so negative towards Muslims. And having an organization like TRT produce this kind of production and bring these kind of speakers is an example of something that I see positive. In Yemen, I hope to be one of those change makers. I have a nonprofit, the Mokha Institute, that we do work on the ground also besides my company. And I think that I'm always trying to look at the glass half full if I can. I think it's really, if we look at the negatives, you will just be sad. But I think that there is so I think whenever I do get sad and I think about what you mentioned, I think of the youth. You're right. And actually the youth, when you hear youth speak and you hear they can imagine a different world, and I think we should listen to them more. You're right.
Hey, you mentioned TRT as a worker of TRT. Let's have a round of applause.
Absolutely.
Thank you, TRT, for hosting this event and for giving us this opportunity to discuss issues that matter. Now, before I move forward, I have about 3 minutes left. I want to ask, do you have any questions? I can only take one question. So if you have any questions, please raise your hands. Anyone? Gonna wait for 5 more seconds. Okay, there's one. Yeah, please come forward. Sure. So, can I have your microphone for a minute? Thank you so much. Yeah.
Hi, hello everyone. So I'm Fatima and I'm a journalism student from Pakistan. My question is addressed to Sara. I was listening you right there, and I was thinking that the terms like entrepreneurship, sustainability, volunteership, it's introduced to students like me in my country or in your country at a very late stage. Maybe we're like in our late 20s and stuff like that, and we're still figuring it out. What does that really mean? What I want to ask you is, like, in our school times or when we're like growing up, what initiatives we should really take to introduce students to these terms? Because I think if you're introduced, or rather known about these terms at a very early stage of our lives, we can do much better in the later years. So what would you suggest about that?
Of course.
Thank you very much for that question, Fatima. Sara? Thank you.
I'm gonna speak to you directly, but I mean, I completely agree with you. I think, especially for, I wouldn't say Turkey. I think Turkey is an outstanding example of mixing both Islamic practice and belief with secularism. I think that they've done it fantastically. And as an Afghan, I wish that my country was like Turkey. But what I'll say is, for those, especially when it comes to young Muslim women, especially in countries like Pakistan and Afghanistan, is there are brackets that have been put on us about what we should be, whether it's a wife, whether it's a daughter, whether it's a mother. And last year when I was chosen for the next generation leaders for Time magazine, most Afghans who reached out to me, wondered, how do you even get to this level? What do you need to be doing? And I can say from my own experience, I mean, my mom
didn't want me to be doing this. She wanted me to keep my head down, finish school, and eventually, settle down somewhere. But eventually, as I started to learn and as I started to teach her about what I was doing in my startup in technology, her mind shifted, and she was like, "Thank God that you never listened to me. Thank God that you actually went on and did what you wanted to do when it came to your education and to your work." But I think it's something that will take time, and it comes to our curriculum because what we're being taught right now, especially in countries, and I can only speak for Afghanistan and somewhat Pakistan, because I had family members who studied in Pakistan at an early age, is the limitation on what a woman can do needs to change right away. Because as we can see with women in this room and our leaders, there is so much that we can do as a gender and that we are doing as a gender. But it also comes from women ourselves, is how can we band together and be a part of changing curriculums, changing the narrative about what we are and who we are and what do we want to contribute as a gender. I think that that's something that perhaps whether it's we have fear or whether there's hesitance, but we need to be careful because the next generation is just around the corner. And how are we coming together, not just within our respective countries, but as a global citizenry, to say that the next generation of women need to be given their fundamental rights, their protective rights. And how can we see a woman not as a woman or as a girl, but as a future leader? And how can we facilitate that process? The wording needs to change from a young girl, a young woman, to future leader, future entrepreneur. These are words that are happening. So it needs to happen from an early age, but the answer comes from all of us together.
Thank you very much, Sara. And certainly the next generation is watching us, so we have to be very careful with what steps we take. I think we're in the dying minute of the program. Mokhtar, let me ask you one final question here. We spoke about the problems, right? Inequality. We are not moving backwards, but some would argue we are not really moving in the right direction either, right? So what needs to be done? Just give us a summary. Like, we have about 1 minute left. Just give us a summary. What needs to be done? What is the utmost priority at this point?
I wish I can answer how to solve the world's problems in 1 minute.
I'm sure that's impossible, but try.
But to go in the direction, I think that we all have to have compassion, empathy. I think that's where it starts. I think what you mentioned about seeing women as future leaders, people in these countries, that are struggling, they don't want people's pity or sympathy. I work in Yemen and I see that, and they're very dignified and proud people. What they want is they want our solidarity. To understand that their struggle is connected to our struggle, and that we can work together. We have so much potential. Our youth, our women, our elders together, we can combine our resources and figure out how to lift ourselves out of our situation. Because if we keep relying on Western countries to give us support and help, we're going to be waiting a long time. I think that moving forward, we have so many opportunities, so many wonderful things that we produce in our countries, and so much amazing youth that with all that together, we can really change our life and build the world that we want to see.
Thank you very much. We live in such a beautiful planet. Guys, let's try to take steps to preserve it. On that note, thank you very much, Mokhtar, Ajay, Jamad, and Sara. And thanks to all of you for listening. Thank you very much. Now I would like to give the floor to my colleague, Kubra Akkoch.